Put up a pair of eyes on a bus stop and people litter less. Have a pair of eyes like that flash up subliminally for less than a second while somebody is playing in an online game, and they cheat less. They become more generous. You're being watched. Give somebody some horrible cod liver oil to drink and it tastes horrible, and for minutes afterward, people will be more punitive about norm violations. They're confusing a bad taste with a bad act. Or how about this one? Put somebody in a room and give them a questionnaire to fill out about their political views. And if there's smelly garbage in the room, people become more socially conservative. Doesn't do a thing to your economic views, your geopolitical views. You feel the same way about our trade deficit with Swaziland that you did this morning, but them and their different lifestyles suddenly begin to seem them and disgusting and wrong, 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 just because visceral disgust alarms are going off because there's smelly garbage in the room. How about this one? Sit somebody in a chair, either a hard wooden one or a nice plush sofa like that, and give them job applications from like resumes of supposed applicants, and they evaluate them afterward. If you sit in a hard wooden chair, on the average, you are more likely to assess applicants as having a rigid, inflexible personality. You are more likely to think they're hard asses because of the chair you're sitting in. Or how about this one up on the right there? This was a study in PNAS, very prestigious journal, a few years ago, looking in a country, all of the parole board hearings in that country over the course of a year, 5,000 hearings, looking at who was sent back to jail versus who was given parole, looking at all sorts of variables, and out of it popped an extraordinary finding. The single biggest predictor of whether or not a prisoner got parole or not was how many hours it had been since the judge had had a meal. If you went before a judge right after a meal, 60% chance of being paroled. 4 hours later, down to 0. Just this line, along comes lunch, down again, a little snack afterward, down again it goes. And what is extraordinary about this is two things. First, we understand the biology of this. Blood glucose levels have something to do with whether your neurons can work really hard. And what counts as working really hard in your frontal cortex? Viewing the world from someone else's perspective, trying to think about their mitigating circumstances. The frontal cortex takes a lot of energy to do the harder thing. And what's even more striking is, if you took any of those judges 2 seconds after they made that decision, and you said, okay, so why'd you send this guy back to jail, but this guy walked? They're not going to say, oh, because of my blood glucose. No, they're going to cite like freshman philosophy class or something. And all the while, this is the interoceptive, the internal sensory information that was shaping that decision. Finally, top left, the most depressing finding in this whole field is you take people, put them in a brain scanner, and you're flashing up faces like 1/10 of a second, barely noticeable, high speed, and for your average person, you flash up the face of someone of a different race, and the amygdala activates. Oh, crap. Hardwired on a 1/10 of a second to have a racist response like that. Is this inevitable? Is this hopeless for us to ever get? Now do the experiment a little bit differently. I recently found out that apparently San Francisco has a baseball team. And that supposedly they have this rival that they get very worked up about. And now you're flashing up the faces, and each face is wearing a baseball cap. And if you get the right San Francisco baseball fanatic, if it's the home team, you get one response. If it's the rival, the amygdala activates and you're not processing skin color. Oh my God, the innate nature of human racism, my ass. All it takes is this cultural thing we invented 1 or 2 centuries ago, and which one counts as an us or a them, and baseball loyalties overrides that, and you've recategorized people within milliseconds there. Okay.